Good evening, guys. This is Ken at Tortoise Capital with the nightly strategy podcast for Friday, May 8th, 2020. We're going to follow a slightly different pattern today. Since it's Friday, I'm going to do the speed run and the report review and the weekend report all tomorrow. Today, I had the good fortune of starting the day off with an excellent email exchange with Van Miller. And the trades were all working without much work on my part. So I had a chance to go through some books and stuff while I was just kind of monitoring positions. And then I slowly got ready for 4 master's thesis defenses today. I had 4 officers whose research I'm supervising defending their theses today for their master's in military arts and science. An Air Force officer who's re-engineering our strategic lift capability to modernize it and leverage civilian airframes. 2 Army officers who are investigating physical fitness and emotional intelligence, respectively, and then a absolutely brilliant Jamaican Defense Forces officer who's on their strategic planning team as the direct ear of the Minister of Defense, and we were working through his adaptation of modern military theory, and he's a profound thinker, and so we just had about 90 minutes of just really good brain work today. It was a really satisfying day at work. So the afternoon trades went pretty well, and I've got a number of trade frames that I want to go through. And so after we go through the market closure and I'm going to do the weekly lessons learned today, some lessons that just really jumped out at me from my learning journal. So I want to just walk through those. And then I've got about 8 or 10 individual trade frames. And so what I'm going to do on that is I don't have them marked up, but what I'm going to do is walk through them bar by bar with you and just kind of call out what I'm seeing. And I'm going to invite you to make your decisions on a trade log where you could record where you're going to enter and do some of that stuff, and then sort of evaluate your judgment against the narration. So this is sort of like the bridge to you acquiring the internal narrative skills, right? So I'll call out what I'm seeing. What you've heard me do in the past is I've called out what I've seen and then marked up my decision. So today what we're going to try is I'm going to call out what I see, but then you make the decisions. And then that's sort of the bridge to you call out what you see and you make the decisions. So in educational theory, we would call this the gradual release of responsibility technique. So this is a technique. I'm going to try this. If we like this, and if you like it, we may do this once a week or something like that, like on a Friday, and then have a set of them for you to work through over the weekend. So we're going to give that a try. So it's all about the narrative inquiry and the use of language. So Eugene and I have been talking about the power of language, the importance of language, and the role that icons and totems and archetypes have when it comes to making sense. There's a limit to those things, and if you take them beyond the region of fit, they can, shape or constrain you in certain ways, which is kind of the work Van does, I believe, with the use of belief analysis and changing at the root level, the habits of mind that we use that are keyed into words. So I think his work in neuro-linguistic programming is kind of aimed a lot at that level. So the whole notion of the power of narratives and words as leverage for action, but also as constraints on action, has been on my mind. Well, one of my mentors is a guy named David Boji, and we're going to see him. If he's not the leading authority in the world on narrative inquiry, he's one of the top three. He's kind of really defined major parts of that whole field about how the power of narratives and stories shape our individual and group views of the world and the way we understand things. And so, because of this email exchange with Van Miller, I had a chance to reconnect with him, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So this is an interesting, but a long, strange trip it's been. And you already know, for me, the power of words in an auditory learning brain like mine. It's when you are auditory and global top down, stories and words and phrases take on a magical quality. I had Van is a architect, career architect, professional, and we were talking about some things, and I had mentioned this phrase here in the yellow. Van, I said, you know at a deep level what I mean about design thinking, craft knowledge as an architect. And interestingly, that's where the design thinking movement back in the 1970s really originated, and it has emerged into a whole line of thinking about what to do with wicked problems, and has sort of been called the design thinking movement. And Horst and Riddle were the original scholars. One was an architect, I believe, and one was an urban planner. And out of that kind of craft artistic knowledge comes a larger philosophical stance about how to address conditions of uncertainty and complexity. And it's been 40 years of very interesting work in the cognitive sciences and design thinking. It has penetrated the Army's planning processes and become a formal part of our problem-solving repertoire, and I use it on a regular basis. So there's deep roots there, and so I was exchanging some ideas with Van, who said, hey, well, Ken, you remind me of a 77 book, A Pattern Language by the legendary Christopher Alexander, who was looking at how to examine the tools and techniques and constructs and artifacts of language, but also of design, to unlock this black box of intuitive artistry into something more like a semi-structured craft knowledge that involved both science and art and management and informed practice, as well as theoretical beauty. That's my understanding of his work. And then his coined term, a pattern language, is expressed in his 77 book, A Pattern Language. Well, I take that as a direct challenge. So off I go to Amazon in a moment to go see how inexpensively I can buy that book. So this is a definition of pattern language, and it has almost some mystical qualities to it. An attempt to express deeper wisdom that brings aliveness within a particular field of human endeavor through a set of interconnected patterns. And so at its fundamental level, genuine art connects the artifacts of the craftsman with some kind of deeper themes that evoke a spiritual response. It gets to our emotional and feeling center and transcends the craft into the world of meaning. And then the method or the media becomes less important than the connection of two spirits over time and space. The idea of aliveness being that the unnamed, a sense of wholeness, spirit, and grace. So that's sort of the Asian Tao concept. While it varies in form, it does also have some qualities of precision and empirical verifiability. I love this quote. Some advocates of this design approach claim that ordinary people can use it to successfully solve very large, complex design problems. So it's almost like the audacity of ordinary people to claim that they think they can solve problems in the world. Yeah, that's what I aspire to be, is that kind of ordinary person. And then using these tools that are knowable, teachable, and craft knowledge. Well, that launched me. So I said, my stream of consciousness was, yeah, that really resonates strongly with the idea of narrative and the performance arts, where we're communicating through these tropes and these archetypes. And these artists' tools on their palette has a strong connection to the patterns and forms of carpenters and craftsmen and masons. It's all of a type, this straddling art, science, and methodology. And in that modality, qualities like elegance and the Japanese, design, less design is more. Like wabi sabi is the uh, concept, and the Danish kind of style, a very laconic style. We're mindful not to confuse the templates that are used in the construction and the framing with the final sense of the finished product. They're simple means to an end, but not simplistic. Well, even though they're simple and they're the means, not the end, I also take pleasure in those means, looking for artistry, elegance, and a certain parsimonious design sensibility, that I find the artfulness in the making and in the tools. And so I'm connecting Van with a friend of mine, GS, who's a engineer, trader, musician, a mystic, an original thinker. And so let's see what happens there. And then I pointed him to Dr. David Boji, the preeminent scholar practitioner in the world of narrative inquiry, Vietnam veteran, my mentor in my doctoral journey, where his discussions of narrative inquiry as a stance, as a research method, but also a philosophical approach to the world, really got into my hardware and motherboard and caused me to rewire everything. He's got a book on 8 different ways to restory a narrative, how to take it apart and reassemble it in 8 different structured ways. It's a book about 150 pages long, and I'm still reading it 10 years later, about a paragraph at a time, and I hope to finish it someday. But it's so profound that I can only get about a phrase, a sentence, or a paragraph into it at a time before it just blows me away. I got to think about it for a month. He is a supporter of the homeless, the mentally and emotionally challenged, the broken people living in the shadows, and he lives that through his action research process of living, making a difference in the world, and does amazing work down there in New Mexico. I consider him a enlightened one, a bodhisattva, and a change agent. He's also the freest thinker I've ever met, and I claim him as a mentor, but just from watching him at a distance and trying to absorb what he does, and the exchanges we've had in person and through emails over the last 15 years have just been phenomenal. As a way to ground himself in the world of practice, he decided at age 60-ish to take up blacksmithing and to get connected back to the world, because he was concerned about not being meaningful and grounded, and what could be more grounded than blacksmithing and moving metal and making things that endure. So we had an exchange on that today, and so I mentioned to Van that the pattern language concept connects strongly to his view of tools and the transcendent nature of language, which I believe is our only hope for freedom in the world and of the world. And just reiterate my goal to become that ordinary person who takes on the challenge of trying to solve complex problems with design thinking. And I'm making that a provisional claim. I'm trying to improve our response to those design problems, because as we know from the wicked problems of Horst and Riddle, wicked problems don't have an end state or a stopping point or a solution. They have management, appreciation, and shaping, and mutual co-creation and evolution. They don't ever change. They're much like that dragon in the river that just keeps going, sort of timeless and eternal, part of the human condition. Well, I forwarded this note of exchange between Van and I, and BCC'd it to David Bogie just to let him know and remind him in what high esteem I hold him. And he sent me a note back that said, hey, they're convening a series of Zoom webinars where some global thinkers in narrative inquiry are going to get around and talk about it and how it can be used to help shape the world in positive humanistic ways, and would I like to attend. And so I was very honored, said yeah, and so we exchanged some things, and I put some words together about that in thanks, and he said, hey, can I quote you on that? And I said sure, and I said a few other things. He said, you're a kung fu master of storytelling. So which just made me blush, but he kind of brings that out of me. He has made me a fearless narrator of whatever feels like it needs to be said in my head. I've learned to trust that voice and just let it go and see what happens and just live with it, the consequences, and try to be a good person on the inside, and whatever comes out is connected hopefully to that, letting the dragon loose, as you might imagine. So this reconnection with him, can be found in the exchange between Van and Miller and I, and the email. So I'm really grateful for your reply. And so right after this and talking with Bogie, I went ahead to go look at the that book by Christopher Johnson. And so as I logged in to Amazon, all this is connected to trading at some point. Hang in there, guys. So I went there and looked, and I said, Amazon knows me pretty well. And so here's the notation of the, it says, here's some books you may like. And everything that is checked in green are books that I have and have read and loved. Duran's Quality Handbook. He's the original statistical process control guy, quality control master back in the teens and 20s and 30s, was my dad's mentor. And my dad used to play golf with Joe Duran. And that kind of got me launched on this entire approach to a statistical based approach to managing trading. In my logistics background, the box and how the shipping container made the world smaller. This is an amazing story about a solution that some guy who was shipping carpet in New England came up with, this 20-foot container, and it got viral, and through no plan, but through emergent qualities, completely revolutionized all of the global supply chains. And this tells that story. And it, in less than a decade, completely revolutionized the world. Implementing Six Sigma is an outstanding book on how to actually do it, to do lean thinking with statistics and organization. The 7 Military Classics is fantastic. Sawyer's treatment of it is brilliant. That's where the 36 strategies build out the Sun Tzu's Art of War at the next layer, which was sort of the inspiration for my document, the 37 Tortoise strategies, which is now 43. The Imagineers of War is about the design thinkers in defense and research agency, DARPA, who invented the internet in response to how to solve the problem of robust communications and connecting researchers from various universities, and thus the internet. They changed the world. Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High, is the only one I don't have. It's a second edition, therefore it is worth reading, because if it was that good and enough people sent feedback, then that's worth reading. And so since that's about language and engagement, and it's cheap, so I bought that. Then of all these other ones that were that second order of connection, I went and bought the Pattern Language, the Poetics of Space, which is a discussion of visual design and artistry in a practical way, the design of everyday things. I had that one and gave it away and reminded myself I needed to buy it. I also have this one, the Tao of Capital. So everything on there is something that I want to read. Um, and so Amazon actually knows me pretty well. But this is what happens when you are a top-down auditory person and the trail that you get on. And so in my mailbox today, what arrived from my last round of purchasing was process-based a handbook of clinical competencies based on science for cognitive behavioral therapy. My daughter's studying psychology, is going to be a psychiatrist. And these guys, Hayes and Hoffman, are very well regarded. And a handbook is the way that a practitioner and an engineer go about into the application. So I think there's some good things in there that are going to be connected to my study of positive psychology as I try to map those to the psychological toolkit that we have to build up our emotional bank account to deal with the stresses and the cognitive emotional costs of trading. That's a real thing. And so I'm interested in both of those, and I trust science and I trust handbooks and engineers. That was followed shortly thereafter by Musashi's Dokudo, which is another writing that extends his work from the Book of Five Rings, back from the 1600s. And then a commentary, The American Ronin, The Way of Walking Alone, a commentary on the Dokudo of Miyamoto Musashi. So that was sort of my afternoon, what I was doing while I was just watching the pot cooking. Sometimes you just got to let the stew cook, and that's they were all working today. All the things that we set up and framed yesterday out of the critical state all started working today. And so when they're working, let them cook. And so that's where that journey took me today. So thank you for that indulgence. So meanwhile, what did the market do today? Here's our 10-day look. So here's our 10-day range from 295-ish down to 279. So that's about a $16 range. 16 on 280 is about a 7% 10-day range. Notice the Dragon voted up and still driving on. The RL10 has taken a couple legs up. Yesterday it closed in that critical state, and we said today could be a decisive move and be ready for large, strong moves in either direction. If it failed, we were using the Dragon as the basis and then the PSAR as the final stop en route down to what was going to be today's 10-day low. That is going to be the 9 and 10-day low for the next 4 or 5 days, as long as it holds, because the low of 4 days ago is now the 10-day low. So it's also the 9 and 10-day low. So that's going to be the dominant structure all of next week. So next week we'll be dropping off, those 4 items. Those 4 items are going to drop off. And now, as those drop off, if this thing can continue, now all of a sudden this feels like that purple line up there at the RL270 feels like it's within reach at 299 and a half ish. We noticed today that this vote up, it gapped up, briefly paused, and then charged all the way through in a steady long distance choo-choo train pulling across the nation, pulling the supplies to the East Coast. and only sold off slightly at the end, so closed very strong. A very strong directional move that had tested the 10-day high. Now look how different that feels when you take those last four off. That feels just like, yeah, we're going up. That feels like, oh, we just achieved the endpoint of a perfect yin-yang symbol, and now we're going to test the 10-day high in the same way that today and yesterday we tested the hump of the RL10 and it voted in a strong fashion up. So that's really the first day of the move out. Well, earlier in the 10 days, you had 2 full days. So Monday could very well be a day that gets us halfway through this boundary up to fair value. But I just want you to notice how differently that feels. Well, at least it feels different to me. If I take that off, that price pattern just feels qualitatively different. I don't know how you feel. Check yourself and maybe make a note. How does that feel, the 6-day look back, compared to that's really actually a 5-day range, so that's like a 5-day NDX. The blue line would be 100 on the 5-day NDX. This thick red line would be 0 on the 5-day NDX. And today it broke out significantly. Now, how does that feel when I put the 10-day on there? And now I closed well, but I'm up around 80-ish on the 10-day NDX. It's a bit of a different feeling. And now that green line now feels significant. So if we didn't have the 10-day look, and if we didn't realize that that green line was significant, that green line used to be the Z2 score back when it was way down in the dragon here. That Z2 line would have been really an extraordinary move. And then here at the 10-day high, that feels like, wow, we have really made a difference. And then as this starts sliding forward, not so much, oh, really not good at all. So that feels like a pause that now what are we going to do? Whereas if you had just looked at those 3 days, now you feel like this thing's just going to collapse. So the point of this is that the lens we choose to use and where we draw the boundaries for context is a choice. It's connected to a belief, but it's just one of the ways that you can look at the world. And so part of what Boji taught me and what Van teaches me too is that you can construct all sorts of windows into the world, that now suddenly if I do this, and now I don't know that this is the long-term fair value, and I don't know anything about the symbol, and I'm restricting my view to just the information on display. That what creates that box? What creates that boundary? Is that intentional? Is it deliberate? Is it one of many that you consider and have chosen to settle in because it makes the most sense to you, or it's the sense that you wanted to make, and so you look to construct a frame that justifies the feelings that you have? So if I didn't have any trade frames on here and I just had looked at all this data and I had a certain feeling about that, and then I said, well, how could I structure my frame so this feels like it's really ready to break out and go? Well, if I wanted to emphasize that feeling, I would just look at that and tell you that story. Look how this thing has just rebounded beautifully. Oh no, but it's just coming up to a 10-day high, and it's going to test that green line just like it tested the blue line and broke through. Well, that's actually what I think. So the 10-day look back period for me is a chosen frame that I've invested a certain amount of attention and belief into the insights that it gives. And because I'm trading day by day, a 10 times that frame just feels like a natural place to look. And I also like looking at the 3-day look back, the 3 previous days, which is why in the NDX I have a 3-day NDX, and which is why in this little construction I've drawn some attention to detail to the open and close of those three, but on the other days I just want to know the range. But the relationship to the opens and closes of the last 3 days plus today somehow feels proper to me when I'm trying to construct that short-term narrative. So I create that particular chart by actually drawing those fat lines in there, and have chosen to make the other bars older than 10 days harder to see and to feel, and they don't have colors, but so that forces me to look at the shape. Once I get outside of the 10-day, it forces me to look at the slope and shape of the dragon and the PSAR stack and the flow of that RL10, and the individual daily narratives are fading in terms of their meaning. And here it's just the ranges of the days, and now the last 3 days plus one, it's the look at the open and close. And then the standard structure of 10-day high, 10-day low, long-term fair value, because the difference between this long-term fair value, the RL270, and the RL10 is the difference between the fast traders and the long-term holders. That's the regression line fractal framework. Well, there was a time when 20 days ago, the differences of opinion were significant. The traders were trading it at 276 down here, and the long-term fair value guys were saying, hey, it's 299, dudes. Now, 20 days later, the traders are trading it at 288. And the long-term holders say, yeah, it's still 299. We still believe that's what it is. And today was a vote in that direction, that the guys who were willing to hold that over the weekend, that's traders taking a position that this is within reason, within reach. So that's how I am interpreting that. Today was therefore, for me, a strong vote up. So the purpose of that little discussion was really to think out loud about the words like frames and perspective and lenses and constraints, but also to anchor that to the kinesthetic and visual by actually drawing those boxes and exploring those feelings of how you respond to those visual cues, particularly if you're a visual learner, or how you feel about them if you're a kinesthetic learner. We know that 78% of the world has either visual or kinesthetic as the cues. So even though I am an auditory learner, what I'm doing in this approach is deliberately trying to look for the creativity that comes to me out of those kinds of experiential learnings, so that I can turn that into language and narrative and words on a page that I can make meaning out of it. So that's that. So my assessment of the day, if I was just going to do a quick gestalt of that thing, strong vote up. It's ready to test the green line. If it can get through there, it should be free and clear to the purple. Monday's going to be the next turning point to see what kind of weekend news gets processed, but very favorable. I have a long bias. Notice that the RL30 extension is now sloping up strongly, and now we've got an expanding outer range fan there of the PSAR flip extension and the RL30, and then the dragon kind of pointing the way in the middle, long and strong, and everything 2 days in a row now have been above that center line of the dragon and took out the previous RL10 hump. That's a really strong, you can't get a much stronger signal on a Friday going into a weekend in a bare normal condition. So that's pretty good. What worked today? So let's find our SPY. So what worked better than the market? So the market was at 1.6. Japan Euroasia, Simon Property, the Dow was better at 1.9 than the S&P. So those large caps are starting to come on. Apple, finance, Home Depot, real estate, materials, Chevron, Nucor, lumber. IWM was better than the Dow, which was better than the S&P. That's the aggressive young traders that are loading up on those risk on conditions and holding them over the weekend. That's a very strong sign up. When lumber and steel and Cisco and Brazil and Mexico and Caterpillar Energy, Tesla, Devon Energy, and oil exploration, all of those finished strong. Those are all the leaders, man. That was a very strong move up by all of the leading sectors and candidates. What was not as quite as good? Tech lagged just slightly. Silver, Google, Walmart, Facebook, Amazon. Google, Amazon still lagging, whereas the other tech leaders are doing better. The Aussie dollar was flat. Wheaton was flat and lost a little bit. Treasuries gave back. The VIX was down, and triple inverse oil. So all of the signs for a broad upward move are in place. So that's what I want to say about the market conditions. So this would be a natural place to pause. The next thing I have for us is to now kind of go through the that set of 10, like bar by bar case studies. If you're, that's probably going to take us, the best part of an hour, but I think it would be an hour well spent. And so again, in order to do this, I think for best value, you should sort of have a little trade log and start sorting through where you feel the impulse to act. What are look for the visual cues. I would almost do this with a 2-column. Let me do it this way. I think if I had a little more time or was more anticipating, I would probably do like 2 columns. I would put a on the left. Sorry. On the left-hand side of my page, I would put the darn. Excuse me. Yeah, on the left-hand side of the page, I would put the triggers and the decisions. You're going to notice the impulses to act. On the right hand side, I would be putting leave room for what you think about it, reflective learning. So it's the aha moment or the impulse to act on the left first column. Second column would be what you think about it. Leave some room in there for what you think it means and to come back to it. So this is our first knee-jerk sort of response or your intentions to trade, and then leave some room on the right-hand side for the kinds of reflective learning that go into the 4-column learning journal. Okay, that's how I think it would be best. I remember what I wanted to do. First things first. So before we get into that, I just want to go through this week's lessons learned. This is about a 10-minute spiel. These were just my one-line entries as I was reflecting over the week that we had. The first one was just reinforced, especially even today, the idea of the critical state being the important moment where the trade frame puts us in a position to trade in either direction. And then the 2R battle drill is the decision making at the end of the trade that we have to rehearse and have that locked in. So you should watch that video every day for 100 days. Because that's the decision making you go through, not just at the 2R, but also at every program level of support or resistance where there's a better than normal chance that it halts and reverses or follows through vigorously. The other important decision that you have to make, and that gets you on the way to the 2R battle drill, is the decision about when to move to no lose plus dinner for 2. That's what your fireman does. Remember? The trader, that youngie, gets us in like he's supposed to, get out of the way. And then the fireman comes in to see what we can salvage from this thing. Since we have already experienced the emotional loss of a full 1R loss, anything that the fireman can do that's better than minus 1R is a gain. So we just set it equal to 0. The fireman comes in with it set equal to 0. And if he can't do anything, well, we tried. He doesn't lose anything. But if he can get us to no lose plus dinner for 2, we've achieved that psychological state where we're not going to lose any money, and then we can hand it off just to the manager, who's then going to take care of the getting us up to the average trade. Okay? So that whole string of the critical state is important because we're closest to the point of failure and gain. And so the amount of distance that it has to move for us to be able to lock in that no lose plus dinner for 2 is small. So we get quicker to the point where we just discover what kind of trade this is going to be, a fractional loss or a chance to maybe make something. And then once we start managing it, the next bigger decision is what to do if it gets up around 2R and starts to stall. Because typically by 2R, it's in a position where if it just continues, then the higher time frames are coming in, and this thing could be massive. So the space between no lose plus dinner for 2 and the average trade, and then up to 2R, that space is there just for routine management, professional routine management. As it starts approaching that 2R battle drill, that's when we bring in the expert, because it could be amazing. So that happened so much this week that was the top lesson. Continuous simplification and the drive to the essence of things. So as I've tried to do these one-pagers, trying to take all this wordy bullshit that I keep giving you and rendering it down to flashcards, battle drills, icons, lock it in, keep it simple. That's hard work for me to do that, but it's work that I'm trying to do. I do that for myself so that I can trigger behaviors, but it starts with these long and winding roads. Musashi's advice, do not engage in useless activities. And so I'm hoping that, like, for instance, today's narrative has value, and I trust you enough that you'll decide if it has value for you. So it has value for me, and I think it might have value for some of you, so I don't even worry about it. I just trust you to make your decisions about the best use of your time. And you can't hurt my feelings, I say, but yeah. The power of language, reinforced by the look into the email exchange and where that can lead, especially for this auditory learners. And then the idea that kata is the physical language of the body. And so if you can render the behaviors into kata form and do it without thinking, then you can behave without thinking in the way that you can speak without overthinking. That you sort of have a vision of what it is you feel you want to say, and you trust that the words will come out based on the toolkit you have for expression. So that's where that pattern language becomes important, those powers of norms and words. Beliefs, okay, so here's one I'm just going to challenge you on today. All right, so just be ready to be challenged. Or not. Beliefs are the start point and the end point of everything. That's how important they are. It all begins, any action begins anchored in some belief from somewhere and when all that. And it's the end point of the action We stopped because of a belief or a reality or whatever, but the beliefs are the endpoints of those actions. So they are extraordinarily important. Uh, no, they aren't. They don't matter at all. Changed my mind. I'm actually just going to take the complete opposite of that position and just see what happens. So I actually don't care at all about beliefs. It absolutely doesn't matter because the only thing that matters to me is action. The action that's taken in between the beliefs, which are just words anyway, it's the trigger for action and the flow and the connection and the behaviors and all that stuff. That's actually what matters. The action in between the beliefs is what counts because that's what produces results. And the results are what is counted. So the action is what counts, and the results are what is counted. So in that sense, the beliefs don't matter at all. It's that act of motion. So I now take the position, beliefs don't matter, and I'm not even going to study them anymore because I just release them and don't care. I only care about the action. Yeah, Ken, but that's a belief. Well, sue me. It's turtles all the way down, man. But what happens if the beliefs really don't matter? What if you could just let go of the effort of just trying to unscrew yourself with all the beliefs and where they come from and all that stuff? What do you say? Let me just set that aside and focus on the action and get that straight and get some good results and then backward engineer to beliefs that matter if they matter at all. Because if the action works and has the results you want, how important was the belief anyway? So focus on the results. Think about the smiling and laughing yoga, where you take those behaviors and it generates a physiological response to release endorphins as if there was a reason to laugh and smile. It doesn't have to be just the intention, and you get all the benefits. In the same way that visualizing the behavior has 80% of the value of actually performing the behavior. We know that from foul shots. So, next, okay, back to beliefs again. Scale matters, so watch your lens. And so that little exercise in putting up those different constraints around the charts and the feelings that were generated from that. And then also the larger choices that you make. I'm connecting this to the lesson yesterday that Gerald put in a picture of EWZ traded on his lens and his scale, and it looked and felt different than what I did because I had some of yesterday's data in there and made the moves wider and steeper, so it felt more rushed and a stronger directional move. And it was the same price data, but it was the scale on the chart that makes a difference. Try toggling between log scales and arithmetic scales and see what happens. Changing your time frame. So one of the reasons I put the multiple regression lines on there is so I can see what the RL10 looks like at higher and higher and higher frames of reference without having to switch between the time frames themselves. I can infer what it looks like from the slope of the lines. This started off being frog champions, and frog champions. So target selection matters. They are intraday trenders and swing trenders. And if what you want is smooth, orderly move of cows down the trail, frog champions. I changed that to read frog champions location and frog champions because where the frog champion is inside the life cycle of his move also matters. So it matters not just that he's a frog champion, a trender, but where he is inside that trend also matters. So they're synonymous in that sense. Frog champions, location, and frog champions. And then the relentless effort to find the mover and frame the trade. Find the mover. Once you get locked in, what is he? What's his location? Frame the trade in both directions. Find the minimum manageable risk box. Enter the tradable move. Call in the fireman to save your ass and deal with it. So I want you to think about the idea of Let's see if I can get this done, if memory serves. So I want you to think about the phrase, key phrase, ready, aim, fire. We're trying to find the mover and frame the trade and all that stuff. So I'm ready. I've taken careful aim with my steady position and breath control and trigger squeeze. Ready, aim, and then fire. Very deliberate 3-step process. Well, what about ready for anything, critical state, hybrid frog? When I'm a hybrid frog or a sideways quiet channel, I'm actually unfocused on a particular target because I have to straddle that and use my peripheral vision and wait for the breakout from that box. So I'm not actually aiming, I'm ready, and then I fire, and then I aim it towards the target that it's moving out for. So once it's gone and I fired, now I got to aim and get my no lose plus dinner for 2. And now I'm safe, and now I can start managing it. So instead of ready, aim, fire, how about ready, fire, aim? Well, how do people get out of a burning building? You're in the movie theater and somebody yells fire. What happens? Does everybody know where to go? Yes, because they can all see the fire escape and the fire exit. When somebody yells fire, where are they going? Immediately to safety. So that's how people, herd animals, get out of a burning building when they're surprised. Do you know what they're going to do? Yes. Why? Because you studied the plan and the architecture and the flow, and you know how herd animals behave. So you could progress from ready, aim, fire to ready, fire, aim to fire, aim, ready. So as soon as somebody yells fire, or that sudden shock explosion in the sideways quiet channel, or the opening bell, and they're off, they bolt. Fire, they're going. So now, which way are they aiming? Follow them, and then get ready to manage the trade once you got your risk out. So ready. So you could precede all this by saying ready, and then fire, aim, and then steer it and then be ready to manage the trade. So a critical state is us having studied the architecture of the movements out of that critical state in the 3 directions it could take. If it just keeps staying sideways quiet channel, then, well, it hasn't voted yet. But when it bolts left or right, up or down, when they yell fire, you let them aim. They're aiming for the damn exit. They're aiming for the fire escape. So then you just got to be ready for that move and then manage the trade. So words matter. I am adopting the posture of fire, aim, ready by studying the behavior of herd animals in a confined space on fire when it's all quiet and they're shocked and startled. They bolt like wild animals. In other words, animals. They're not, a wild animal, it's an animal. We're highly evolved primates with strong connections to that animal brain with fight or flight and adrenaline. So instead of ready, aim, fire, which may be the way that you learn, maybe I put brackets around that and say, I'm ready and I've aimed where the target that I've selected and framed it, and now I'm ready to fire my entry, And now inside of that tactical moment when I've set the trap and stalked it and set it up, I'm just waiting for somebody to yell fire and then see which way they're aiming, and then I'm ready to manage it. So it almost goes ready, aim, fire, and then fire, aim, ready. So think about that stream of logic. How do people get out of a burning building? Isn't that what every sideways quiet channel feels like? Isn't that what it feels like at every opening bell? That's why it's such a big deal. And they're off. Well, we can be ready for that. Now, what happens after an unambiguous move and it comes into a critical state? Well, now they're already fired up and agitated and emotional, and they're ready to bolt again for the second burst. When they're in a movie theater and everybody's sideways quiet channel and enjoying the movie, and then surprise. Okay, so that's why they bolt. But after the first leg out, that first sprint is done, and now they're trying to figure, okay, now, do I go left or right? I got a real choice to make. Do I jump over the Crocodile River, or do I keep running in the same direction? So they've come to that decision point. Like Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So now that hybrid frog turns into either an owl reversal or a collapsing dragon continued to fail. Now we're into chain trading. So there's a whole series of evolutionary frames that are all geared towards that original, emotional, powerful moment embedded in the critical state and that first surprise breakout. Well, we know what those look like. We can define those with mathematical precision. We can rack and stack a set of 60 different symbols to find the target that works. And so what are we looking for? Frog champions, location, that's kind of what we're looking for. Frog champions, location, and frog champions. And then we want to rapidly find the mover, frame the trade, use whichever one of these resonates with you. Ready, aim, fire, ready, fire, aim, ready. It doesn't matter. Those are just beliefs in a sequence. And I just said, beliefs don't even matter. Changed my mind. All that matters is the action in between the beliefs and then counting the results. And use that to reverse engineer back to the beliefs that are actually useful and grounded in evidence. And now, as Eugene points out, action is that bridge from belief cluster to belief cluster. And did you just bounce off the wall and end up in the same cluster but on the other side of the river? Or did you land in a new thing? So this is part of the power of language and visualization and then freedom and content. So there's some kind of in between. The power of language is for the auditory guys. The freedom with kata is for the kinesthetic guys. The piece that's missing in here, that middle line for me, the integration piece, is the power of flashcards and pictures to capture both of those things, the power of language and the freedom of kata rendered into a visual flashcard. So don't engage in useless activities, continuous simplification, drive to the essence. And then finally, back to the very first lesson, back up the ladder, the importance of the critical state, the techniques and power and discipline and systematicity of trade framing, and those two absolutely critical execution decisions. The 2-hour battle drill on what to do with a successful trade. That should be your most rehearsed decision, with the possible exception of the no lose plus dinner for 2. And even that one is not a rehearsal so much as it is locked into an absolute value. When it gets through there, bam, battle drill, call the fireman in. or the fireman is done. Release the fireman. That dude's not thinking about it. He knows exactly what to do. Think about the Tin Woodsman rescuing Dorothy with the axe and going after that door. He knew exactly what to do and save the day. Be that guy. Be the Tin Woodsman. Have a heart. Okay? So that's, look at us, right on the hour. Well done. Those were my lessons learned from this week. Part of the reasons that that was on my mind is because yesterday I went through all of the flashcards that we had gone through from all the weeks. I was reviewing all of those things that were locking in the little daily lessons, and I put all those in one big file and just flipped through them on a video screen and just saying, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah," and then I just paused and reflected to see which ones really struck home and stuck with me, and then I put those into words as an auditory learner on this flashcard. And when it felt right and felt full, then I had just linked together auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So there we are. Hey, Ken, I thought this was a podcast about trading. Yes, it is. Okay. All right, so this one's good. I want to start with SPCE. So you should have your little 2-column, note-taking sheet, learning journal. I recommend left side. Notice the impulses to act and maybe record the decisions that you would take. Commit to it. Paper trade this going forward. And then the second column, leave blank, and then come back to it when you want to study what it feels like. Okay. So here we are. It is today. And those are just, the yellow dot in the box are just placeholders because we're going to draw this in a minute. So it gaps up. Notice the VWAP has risen. We're about 5 bars in. Wow, what a extraordinary opening 5-minute range. And you could either draw this as a OR5, or I'm just going to go with the low of the day. I'm going to say that those 2 tall spiky candles were ridiculous. So I'm going to put the peak of the RL10 down here to kind of where to the low of the day and the piece are. That box is what feels right. The move outside of the Z3 feels like the anomaly. RL10 has rolled over, has come back to test the low of the box. RL10 reverses again. Now remember what I said about the RL10 is the price and the bars are noises, unless that price hits your stop loss. And I'm going to adjust this box. This is how I feel about it right now, is from the bend of the 10 to the bend in the RL in the 10. That feels like the genuine range. Now notice how the dragon is right in the middle of that and the VWAP is now horizontal and just marching along. And now for a moment, price is on the south. So here it is. We had a big gap up. This is how I'm thinking. Here's the long-term fair value. We see a rising RL90. That feels good long-term. This is an upward trend. The RL30 is even higher and rising. The VWAP is already way up here. Potential target, and the peak of the 10 is the potential target. New high of the day way up here. The RL10 has reversed. I've already got the opportunity to do a 1, 2, 3 entry right here at the yellow dot. If you want a 1, 2, 3 entry right there, enter and call it a 1, 2, 3 entry. Or might you want to wait for it to cross the skin of the dragon or cross the VWAP or break out above the RL10. So this would be an emerging dragon here. This would be a form of the emerging dragon when it does the PSAR flip and the breaks out of the higher 10. So that's a decision point for you. What do we have here? RLXD, pass through the PSAR, up we go. There's price right there, and here's the yellow dot is on the price at the RL10. I pull back to the VWAP. The RL10 is still rising. Where did you, if you have entered already, where did you place your stop? Did you decide where that was, or do you remember now that you need to have that stop in place? You wouldn't be wrong if you picked, oops, you'd be wrong if you picked an orange line, Kenneth. But a red line here would be a reasonable stop at the belly of the RL10 and the PSAR flip. I would also have accepted an answer at the base of the dragon. How far up the stack does this have to go before you put in a your no lose plus dinner for two? How far does price have to rise up? Here's where price is right now. Based on where you put your, like if you entered here, you might have, whoops, when price had moved this far, you might have elected to put a no lose plus dinner for two right there. And 4 bars in, it's now a science project. Look how differently that feels. Make some notes on your sheet. So there's price right there. So now I'm noticing the dragon has just crossed the VWAP. Price recovered from the VWAP, didn't even get through the spine of the dragon, but now the RL10 has rolled over. Now this looks like an interesting price level. Here was an RL10 peak. There's an RL10 peak. Price has moved to that yellow dot, and then depending if you have entered, you may have entered here, or here, or here, or here, or you may have decided to wait to enter in here. But if you entered anywhere in this region, you're now entitled to start thinking, man, I want to lock in the gain, because if I'm here with a 1, 2, 3, am I thinking about, man, I want to lock in do I want to lock in a gain here, or maybe just below the VWAP, or below the skin of the dragon? Or even if I'm just using the PSAR, I want you to notice that the PSAR has already locked in a favorable trade for you. So if you're taking this moment as it's testing that next hump of the RL10, where is your no lose plus dinner for two stop? Maybe pretend it's just right there halfway. And then how much further up this stack before I add a second position? Am I going to go here? New high of the day. From where I entered, that's all. That new high of the day is also kind of about the Z3 excursion. So where am I going to add a second position on this thing, if I am? And what's my strategy? Am I going to just trail that stop? That kind of stuff. So I want you to recognize that if you might have had that kind of risk right there. If you had entered at the RLXD, your risk would have been something like that. In any event, you're holding at least, even if you took the second entry, up in here, you're still holding one execution order, no matter what. All right, so here we go. Probably a stop is hit, but check your own oil. It has pulled down to the VWAP, held support at the PSAR. It never hit the PSAR. The RL10, it took that much adverse price. Those two came down and penetrated. And that caused the RL10 to roll over, but it just came to the belly of the dragon, and now you can already see it's starting to roll back up. So the RL10 is the price. The bars are the noise, unless it hit your stop and then you're out, because you don't want to be thinking about that. RL10, sideways, choppy, Z3 lines are pinching, approaching the VWAP, really starting to pinch, expanding. There's a Z3 breakout. Does that feel like a new leg? Yes, feels that way to me. Oh, had you looked at the MACD histogram before? What does that tell us? The move up was in the summer to here, and then became fall through the Red River, testing, and now we've got summer, fall, summer. That's sort of decisive. There's a Z2 entry. There's a Z3 entry. Where do you want to enter? Let's just let's split the difference and say somewhere in here. Let's say that you hadn't taken that as an entry, and I came in and said, "Hey, I need you to manage this trade. I got an entry at the yellow dot. This is what I'm going to tell you right now, okay?" And I did this with Laurent, and this changed the way he learned how to manage the trade. This is what I gave him. I said, "Laurent, I took the entry at the yellow dot, and my stop was the PSAR. And because of this move right here, I have already moved my stop to no lose plus dinner for two. So my risk is out of there. I said, but I got to run to a meeting. So I need you to manage this trade for me. All right. So you are long from the green line and the yellow dot. Your stop is at the, let's see, I'm going to say, I don't know where this thing ends up going. So I'm going to say the stop is right here. We got a good fill. So I want you to manage the trade. Don't let it lose money. So don't let it come below this red line, and then you can exit anywhere you want. So I'm going to leave that up to you. and you get to keep half of whatever you gain. Make that deal with yourself. Oh, pretty good move so far. So here's the maximum excursion. That thing got outside. That thing got outside of the Z3. That's the maximum excursion so far. So you got to decide where you want to draw your stop, and you get to keep half of whatever you get on your exit. You get to keep half. Somebody handed you a free trade, and all you got to do is manage it, and you get to keep half. That's what this average manager, that's his incentive, not to let it go below that first red line. The fireman kept it from going through the lower level. His job was actually pretty easy this time. Right? I want you to think about these as the psychological roles that you can be thinking about managing your own trade, and the kinds of contracts that you, the chief of staff, can establish with the different parts of you. Keep half. If any of these things cause you to exit, now here's what I'm seeing. I see this entire move up. We went into the summer, into the fall, and now this summer move to here. It pulled back, didn't even get to the Bollinger Band mean. Did you get out at the PSAR? That would be your exit. If you got out there, would you get back in on a RLXD or a PSAR flip? Think about that. Here's what I'm going to say. Now, suppose a fresh new thing. I came back and said, we took that exit, and now I have re-entered on a 1, 2, 3. I'm right here. Same deal. I bought the up to, I'm just an amazing trader. You don't have to even worry about it. This was fire, aim, ready. I fired because it was aiming up. When it reached the, when it got into the dragon, I just said, this is going up. So I just went ahead and got in at the green line. And I now have a stop at the red line. Okay, same deal. You get to keep half of whatever you get. Okay, so I've given you a trade that's moved out 3 bars in your favor. It's getting ready to challenge the PSAR flip, and the RL90 is still strong up. The river is strong up. The second leg is as strong as the first one. We are in the fall, but getting ready to roll up again. And the VWAP is way down here, and you're safe because you got your no lose plus dinner for 2 stop in. Okay, so you get to decide where you want to exit. Well, if you haven't exited yet, you have to exit now, or I'll fire you. Or better than that, I'll take back the money. Every dollar that you lose under that red line, I'm going to take 2 from you. So that was kind of the opening rounds on SPCE. There were 2 very strong opportunities, 3 opportunities to make money. Maybe the first one was the strongest leg. The second one gave us a chance for a quick hit and a resumption. Notice how quickly that thing went, the summer, fall, summer. And then the breakout from Z3P gave us a really strong move. This vertical move here was as good as that vertical move there. Happened fast. That turns out to have been a 60 cents favorable move. Our initial risk back here is probably the size of my 17. That's about 20 cents. So that's each one of those moves would be about a 3 execution R on a 20-cent risk, which is 1%. That's 1% of the Virgin Galactic. Okay. Now, just by show of hands, did you find that helpful? Did you find that useful? Imagine that I could give you 15 minutes to work your way through that and compare your notes. And then if we were in a workshop, I'd have you pair up with your partner and share and get some insights and all that shit. So do that fast in your head. Come back to that later. Now, we take a break for lunch and we're coming right back to work, and the emergency desk tells us, hey, coming out of lunch, Simon Property Group, or no, I'm sorry, Virgin Galactic again has set up in our favored pattern, our favorite pattern of all, starting at about 1 o'clock. And what is that favored pattern? It's the super pinch. So we have a 20-cent box drawn between the Z3s. So from Z3 to Z3 turns out to be about 20 cents. Well, it looks a lot wider now because we got closer. The power of perspective. So we are about, we still got 4 hours to the end of the day. That's a lifetime in a rocket ship. I want you to notice that not only has this crushed down to a 20-cent box between the Z3 line and the Z3 line, and the VWAP is just solid as can be. We're below the VWAP. And the PSAR is just straddling right inside here. This little PSAR was actually underneath the price. See, that's underneath the bars. And then the first vote breakdown was here, this long spike, which then recovered. That's actually a PSAR flip right underneath that yellow dot. And now the PSAR is on top of this rascal. And so here we are in the Z3s. This bar pinched as tightly as they could, but now they're starting to expand because we've had 2 bars in a row of southern price action, and it closed outside of the river. You'll notice right here. We're going to get our microscope out here. So like anything, you measure with a micrometer, you mark it with a crayon, and then you cut it with an axe, right? So we'll notice, let me draw an arrow in here if I can. That would be cool. So this is where the PSAR flipped from below to above. Look at the non-movement of these little bars. That's like a penny. And then the first spike down in recovery, or no, the first spike down and closed on the Bollinger Band mean, opened on the Bollinger Band mean, sold off 2 bars in a row and a poor close. It's now below the RL90, which has fallen out of the river. The RL10 has curled down and has come out of the river. Price is therefore out of the river. The RL30 is a little bit slower, and it has just crossed the RL270, which is sloping down. And the dragon is expanding and sloping down. So here's what I'm going to do, and I want you to manage this trade. Wow, look at that big fat line. So I got entry short because I'm awesome. I'm just awesome. I got short when it crossed the Bollinger Band main. Okay, and I'm gonna. So there's my green. Right. So here is my entry. My entry blob is in here because I'm that kind of amazing. And now I've got a no lose plus dinner for two stop, just like right here. Okay. So don't let that stop get taken out. You get to keep half of whatever you gain. Okay. You get to keep half of whatever you gain. And whoops. So right now, price is like right here. Okay. So just figure out your strategy. My initial risk, just so you know, would have been like up in here. That the far side of the Z3. That just feels like really tight to me, and especially if I got that kind of entry, that would be Z2, that would be Z3, that would be the other side of the VWAP. So let's just say I took the widest possible risk, not possible, the widest reasonable risk, and we're just going to. I don't even know how much that is, but that's actually the yellow box. Oh, the yellow box is 20 cents from Z3 to Z3. So if I entered here, shorting it on the button, there's my 20-cent risk. You see how that works? Visual box trading. And after 2 bars of open risk, I just decided I'm not going to lose any money on that trade. Okay, and now I've handed it off to you. Okay, so saddle up. Here we go. Now price has moved way out of the box now. So this green, that little blue box is all our wins so far. That's how much we've won. Do you want to keep half of that? Then exit now, or put your stop halfway in that stack. That's how much we've gained right now. Okay, so let's try it again. It was outside Z3, has now come back inside Z3, inside that management box, and closed, and has now opened at the skin of the dragon and sold off sharply again. Awesome. So now this candle is live. This candle in here is live, and it's selling off, and now it's here. Holy shit. Wow. Pardon my language. That's how much we have in hand. So that's about 1.5 execution risks. Are we going to lose money on this trade? We are not going to lose money on this trade. Yeah, so Eugene's aha moment. He said, I have no idea what move I need to get to dinner for two because I don't have a handle on what my position size will be, so I don't know what to model right now. Here's what I want you to do, Eugene. I want you to use $200 of initial risk and let that be an execution R. And $50 is no lose plus dinner for two. So you then make a decision which says, if I risk $200, or if you want, pick $100. I don't care. Pick $200. If I risk $200, at what point in this move do I want to lock in $50 for no lose plus dinner for two? Now, this idea scales, so no lose plus dinner for 200 or no lose plus dinner for 2,000. It's the same decision. No lose plus dinner for 2 to the n. 2 times n, 2 times 10 to the n. Okay? That should be the sound of your head exploding with an aha moment. The power of no lose plus dinner for 2. So that's what we're holding as a gain right now. Next bar opens slightly higher, it ticks up. So this was our maximum favorable excursion right now, and I'm going to start drawing that line in there so you can feel the pressure. All right, so that's our maximum favorable excursion right there on the blue line. That's so close to a 2R execution battle drill that, this is why you've got to make a decision when it gets up around 2R-ish. How much of that do I want to give back? How much of that money is mine? The deal I made with you is you get to keep half of whatever you keep, right? So here's where, if you got out right now, you would get to keep that much. That's your money. So if that yellow box is, or let me put it that bright blue. What a horrible color. Ugh. So this is how much money you've earned if you just took, if you were going to keep half. That's how much money you have right now. Every dollar it comes back, you lose 50 cents. Ken, I'm going to tell you, you want to calculate R against the position sizing stop so that what we're fighting for here is like 0.3, so that you just get used to managing small things that don't matter. If you're fighting over the difference between 2.2, 0.3, 0.4 mathematically, then psychologically you're not sweating this at all because you know you are in no danger to the portfolio. So you can apply good principles of management. It's just using a mathematical trick to fool you. And then you can decide how big the position sizing risk versus the execution risk is. But what I do is keep a standard position sizing risk for all my day trades, regardless of what that little minimum manageable risk box is. I don't want a really, really narrow manageable risk box to cause me to become 5 times larger than I normally would be, because then I'm really under a lot of stress on that one trade. I don't want that to happen. So I calculate the R's from the position sizing stop, which is standard for all day trades. and just start with one frog box. And now you're fighting for, you know that everything we trade can move 2 frog boxes in a day on a quiet day. It could move 4 on a regular day. So there's plenty of room for this stuff to work. And so a frog box position size will keep you from exploding. Like a frog box in this is like $1. And we're talking about managing a 20-cent yellow box. So we're not going to blow up, and we don't have to worry about the psychological damage of one bad trade. Comprende? I want you to really reflect on the power of that idea. And that was one of the big lessons learned for this week. And I really want you to lock that in. You know, we think yesterday about how you evaluate your knowledge levels and all that. That's one, you want to get that one locked in to the point where you can teach it and then believe it. That one's important. Okay. So here we are. You can see that our price is here at the blue arrow. Oh, and it has fallen down through our maximum favorable excursion. Hooray for the team. Well, Frank, don't ask me. You're managing this trade, not me. I don't care where you put it. I get half of whatever you're going to gain, and you get the other half. Answer your own question. If there's more than one place that you're thinking about doing it, make those notations. In all the time that I'm spending bullshitting around here, make some notes to yourself about the places that look to you like they could be reasonable places. I want you to observe while this thing is, note the feeling of relief when it makes a new maximum favorable excursion, right? While that thing is failing beautifully, you might actually take that moment to say, you know what? Let me lock in that move. And then while it's falling, I'm aiming and I'm ready for the next big move. Now I feel ready because my stop is in. So this was fire, aim. Now I feel ready. I aimed my stop. This thing is firing on its way down, so I aim my stop. Bam! And now I feel ready to relax for my next decision, which is when I'm going to move that. But then I just noticed some other positive. Look at the dip in the VWAP. This move to the south came on massive volume. Look how much volume just got traded at this price. And it fell through that price. Here's the next target down here. That's the next support level. That's the market profile. Now I want you to notice the PSAR is slow to adapt. So I might want to front run in this case until the PSAR can accelerate, especially on a thing that's getting out here past Z3. And notice how the fingers of the Bollinger Bands are spreading out and the dragon is getting wide and chasing. So make your stop decision. Holy smokes. It just came out of the Z3 channel. I don't care what you're doing. I'm moving my stop to there. You do whatever you want. I want to get paid. I have no beliefs being operated right now, except I believe I want to get paid. What do they say? The old Jay, everybody's got to believe in something. I believe I'll have another beer. I'm not a beer drinker, but I understand. Ooh, ooh, oh! Runaway freight train. I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish Ken had given me the ability to put a second position in. That'll come next week or whenever. Manage one trade, manage it correctly, lock that in before you start screwing around with second positions and all that other shit. Just manage one trade. Pardon my language. Holy mackerel. What a bar that was. In the course of 3 minutes, this thing moved $1. Not even sure how far down it went. I'm just seeing where it closed right there. Holy hell's bells. So I'm going to give you a chance right now. It went to this level. And here's where it closed. That's how much it's retraced. So I'm using that Z3 line as my stop for this moment. And now I have about 10 seconds to make a decision. What am I going to do? So make a decision on what you want to do. This is our maximum favorable excursion now. So how much is half of that? Feels like about that much. And I compare that to my initial risk. That's about 1, 2. Huh. How about that? So what we have is a 4 execution R. Yeah, Van says, and it's fractal 2-hour, 4-hour day, as long as its position sizing is accounted for and the trade is frame profit. Yeah, this could be, you know what this looks like? I mean, this is 1 minute charts on SPCE because that's what the label said. Don't you see that this is also the collapse of the S&P on daily charts 2 months ago? Exactly the same thing. Only that's 480 times higher. You know, there's 481 minute bars or something like that. I don't know, whatever it is. 500 minutes. Fractal. That's what I mean about the fractal nature of this stuff. Are you guys finding this useful? Like, most of you are still here, so I'm going to say yeah. So make your decision on your stop. It opened, it rolled up, and then came all the way back. So we're going to say, no, actually, what it did was this. Yeah, it rolled all the way up. Just missed my stop, and now has come back through here and has now come to a new maximum excursion. Now, if you took an exit at that green line, you're pretty happy. You're happier than a dead pig in the sun, you know? But now your maximum favorable excursion is down to here. went all the way down to here and has now come back up to here. Try to clean this up a little bit. So now you're making your plans. What to do now? Our maximum favorable excursion is here. That looks like another execution R. So now you're what you're holding is probably, your half of the gain is like right here. So now I want to put you in this mental state of mind. What if you were trading somebody else's money and your deal with them was, look, you get to keep half of the excess gains and I get to keep the other half because I put you into the position and I funded your account. Or he says, hey, you funded your own account, but I put you into a winning trade and I get to keep half. Since I found all the trades for you, you got to give me a finder's fee of half of whatever you keep. And you negotiated it to, okay, a third. I get a third. No, I get 20% of the finder's fee of whatever you gain. And you get to keep 80 or 90%. Now what you're doing is negotiating with yourself about the kinds of profits that you want to retain as yours and how much you're willing to give back to the other guy. Now, does it even matter if the other guy is the other trader on the other side of the trade, or your senior advisor who gave you he gave you his trade to manage and you don't want to let him down, or he's your money partner, or it doesn't matter. At some point, you got to make a decision how much of that money is yours, and then you got to live with it no matter what happened. Like, for instance, if you had gotten out at this green line, at the moment you were happy, but now you might be sad. So you got to get past both of those. It's just a number. It doesn't even matter yet. The only thing that matters was, once again, you cheated death. You didn't lose money on that initial venture. And it's a science project just to see how much your rules, and all you're doing is checking on the effectiveness of your rules. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person. You're just evaluating dispassionately a set of rules constructed by some fucking engineer and managed by a monkey. All of us. That's what we are. So here you are in the trade. I'm going to say, hey, that stop wasn't hit. And so you're still in that trade. You decide where in this stack right now you are. Hey, maybe this is where I brought you in. I said, hey, I managed this thing all the way to here, and my stop is at like a 1 bar high. Don't lose anything more than that green, or don't give back more than that green line. So if you're right here, I'm giving you that much wiggle room, and that's where the current favorable excursion is. So, all right. So now, just in the land between those two green lines, you tell me what your strategy is to capture those moves. Now, let's look at the context of this thing. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars out of the Z3. Z3 fully extended. It's at about 5 execution R, or 1 frog box. We don't have any of the other context. We can't really see any of that. But you just decide where you want to put what your exit strategy is, okay? Hey, let's go take a look down here. We are still running away into the winter. Not even close to a hesitation yet, right? opens, runs 2/3 of the way back up, and is closed here. So we're still active because you were wise and used my stop. So I'm going to say I'm just going to keep marching down here with a 1-bar high. Now that that's closed, I'm going to be right here. Like I'm taking the two, the live bar has to take out the high of the previous bar. That's my rule right now. I just invented a rule. So let's see where this thing opens. Opens right there. Bam. So we're out of that fucking trade. Pardon my language. We're out of that trade. Okay. How fast can you get into the zero state right now? Time. You should be in the zero state right now, ready for the next thing. So that's what kind of our trade looked like under one iteration of this. Short at the red line. Now I want you to notice on that kind of a move, how important was the absolute precision of that red line? It doesn't matter. What mattered was how fast you could get that green line in from up here. And it didn't matter, from up here or up there. That represents like a 0.2 loss. That's a 0.3. So it doesn't even matter. How fast can you get that thing locked in? Now it's a science project. And this one and then leave it there until it's time you want to start thinking about locking in pieces of half the move or whatever, something like that. It got as far down the stack as this, and there were a couple reasonable places that a guy could have made a choice to get out and still been very happy with a couple, like this one could have happened. But even if you're using like a 1-bar trail, that one doesn't get you out, even though there was a big run up. And this one doesn't get you out. It only got halfway up the stack and then drop it to here, and then that one gets you out. So hey, guess what that also is? Guess what? Look at the Z2 is here, is here, is here, and kicks you out right there. So when this thing got as maximum favorable excursion out here to the Z3, watch what happens. When that thing got out here past Z3, you could move your stop to Z2. Or even move it to Z3. When it gets past Z3, draw this line over here. And that's a pretty good exit. You keep most of that. On this case, the green line, or the green box, I should say. That green box is how much you captured of the maximum favorable excursion. Now, we made a deal at the start of this where I put you into that position, so I'm going to get half and you get to keep half. Do you want to do that for 100 trades? At some point, you're going to say, hey, I got it. I want to keep more. I think I can find those trades, and I'll just keep 80% of the maximum favorable, which is something like this. Hey, Ken, I don't actually need you to find critical states. All I got to do is know the super pinch. What is that? That's the super pinch. Say it, super pinch. It became a sideways quiet channel when it stopped failing or gaining, and then became a Z3 pinch. And then when all the regression lines got in the channel, it became a super pinch. All right, so we spent about 1 hour working through a 12-minute trade. So what you got to do is figure out how to get in front of that. So it'll be a lot easier when I'm not talking all the goddamn time. But you can use exactly this method to sort it out. And here's what you can do in your small group learning accountability partners. Each one of you find a trade that's representative, and then you set it up, and then you take turns leading your teammates through it. You got 4 guys in your group. Each guy prepares one trade with the lessons learned and the insights, and you don't even show them the name of the thing. Just show them the stats and the critical state, and then go through it bar by bar. I knew that what I had to do was have these white boxes in here so that I could actually reveal what was going on inside those bars so that you could realize the power of one bar. All right, so if I had unlimited time, guess what else we could do? We could say, oh, so later on this thing has now become a the RL10 is rolled up. It's entered the Z2, the Z1. Hey, there's a P1, and look at the dragon is all the way out. There's an RLXD. Or are you going to wait for is it an owl yet? No, it's not an owl. Now it's an owl. Do you want to buy the owl? And we could go through exactly the same routine with, do I want to buy the 1, 2, 3 entry, which is here? Do I want to get the RLXD entry? Yes, you want the RLXD entry right at the skin of the river, and then with a stop down here at the PSAR. See how wide that is? Or the belly of the dragon for your execute. That's a 0.1 risk of a frog box. That's 10 cents. Guess what? By the time it has made that move, aren't you right here, like right now, no lose plus dinner for 2? Yes. Yes, you are. At that moment, instead of being here at the PSAR, you just say, screw that. I'm not losing money on this trade. I'm not going to lose money on that trade because my entry was here. I'm not losing money on that trade. I call no changes. What would we call this? Chain trading. Started with a sideways quiet channel. Imagine this was simply the start of the day instead of being at lunch. This could have been where where, if that was blue, that could have been where it closed yesterday. And now we have the trade, and it's a hybrid frog, exactly the same pattern. Hybrid frog is simply treated as a sideways quiet channel Z3 pinch right from the opening. So just get in, get your risk out, and then figure it out. That's my three steps. Get in, get your risk out, figure it out. That's my new flashcard. Now I don't even care. It's just a science project. No. You going to lose money on that trade? No, you are not. At some point, you might just say, let me lock in the spine of the dragon, or the Bollinger Band mean, or the skin of the dragon, whatever. But you're making these gains compared to the green. Now it's just the red line compared to the green line, and you decide how much you keep. All right, so that was 2 trades out of 10. These other ones are not going to take anywhere near that goddamn long. All right, I think you have the idea. So I want you to feel what this feels like. I'm going to go through these rapidly now, just so these were all today. This was today. And these are all things that were in critical states, and the fish were jumping. So here's my box. There's my entry. I just put you in here, or I put you in right here at the RLXD. I'll put you into that trade right there, or here, or here, or here, or here. I mean, not later than there, for crying out loud, right? Because look, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. You know the call it, the parallelogram. Don't you just have to get in right there? I think so. And then your stop. Like, it doesn't even matter really, right? Because uh, are we even going to let it get that far? If it right now, if it fails it, I don't know. Maybe. So maybe there's my stop. And then my job is how fast. So my trader put me in. What a nut. Now I'm the fireman. This is the only decision that actually matters. That's a belief. How soon can I get to no lose plus dinner for 2? I got to be able to get my stop up into here at some point. So I got to clear the deck. Now, okay, now. So maybe when the PSAR, hey, when the PSAR gets above the entry, you've seen a significant move because the PSAR used to be all the way down here. And now look, the PSAR has moved all the way through your minimum manageable risk box. So maybe you could just let the PSAR decide when you get to no lose plus dinner for 2. How about that? Yeah, Van, sometimes that shit will happen. You were in a downward trade and it was instantaneous flash north. Sometimes that'll happen. Sometimes bad fills. That's why the larger and more liquid of the things you trade, the relatively smaller bars those will be, and the less times those anomalies will happen. So really, what I want you to see now is that PSAR could actually be how you get to no lose plus dinner for 2. Not unreasonable. And that way, the only way you even take a full execution R is if it collapses the very next bar and comes down and hits you. Otherwise, this thing just starts locking it in, locking it in, locking it in, locking it in. And now I'm at no lose plus dinner for 2, 10 bars in. Hey, and I'll just tell you, if this thing hasn't worked in 10 minutes, something else is going on. So the PSAR ain't bad. Maybe you're out, probably out. If now I want you to think about this fractional gain. So came down, noise got through the VWAP, the price didn't. And now what do you have? You have the same trade. Watch this. Notice the PSAR flip. Are you going to lose money on that trade? No, you are not. At some point, aren't you going to, like, if this was the PSAR, like, the PSAR hasn't gotten out of my box yet, but look where price is. Price is already up here. Do you think I'm going to let that fall from here down and hit my trailing stop because I have a rule that says the PSAR is my stop? Hell no. I'm here, and if I haven't moved it yet, I'll just accelerate to their 3-bar low, leave it locked in. I've got an R in hand, command override. Look, I'm at the skin of the dragon, so I could trade up to the skin of the dragon on this one. Hey, I just exceeded this Z3 line here. You could almost convince me to do this. Bam. And I just locked in 2 positions. No lose plus dinner for 2 on the second one. And now here's the peak of the RL10. Make a decision. Science project. The only thing I care about this one is I'm not losing money on this trade. Out. In. Tradable move. Tradable move. Tradable move when it crashes through the VWAP with a logical exit right there. Fair enough. I just put you in that trade. Now you manage it. Hey, entering these things is easy. There's your trade. Oh, got it. No lose plus dinner for 2. I don't care which one of those you put in. Pick one. Moving my stop up, moving my stop up. Bang, 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 bang. Second position in, up, no lose plus dinner for 2. Use the PSAR. Couldn't you feel that failing? There's your P1. RL10 rolling over. 30's rolling over. There's your PSAR flip. There's the RLXD. This is a frog champion. Look how orderly this dude is. This is Mexico. Mexico. There's an exit on the PSAR. There's the RLXD. Or you just take that and you get paid off in a large way. Mexico, frog champion. This is Devon Energy, frog champion. Z3 pinch. Short. Stop at the P. I'm not even using a full manageable risk box on that one. Just the PSAR. The initial PSAR. Now I want you to decide how soon you're going to go to no lose plus dinner for two. Okay. You should get one of those little toy clickers, the little mechanical crickets, and so you have to click it so that you can't even pretend you didn't click it. You either clicked it or you didn't. What pattern does this feel like? Fake one, go two. Scratch, stop and reverse. Say it again. Scratch, stop and reverse. Fake one, go two. So now we're long, and our stop is there. So our stop's in place. Our only decision is how soon do we get to no lose. And remember, we're looking, hey, that would be nice if it could get back to the VWAP. That'd be awesome. That'd be cool. By this time, I'm going to be underneath. If you got out there, I'm good with that. If that didn't get you out because you were using the Bollinger Band main, your stop's got to be here by now. Ooh. So if this got you out, that gets you in. So if you got in at this breakout above, or you got out, or you got back in here with the stop below the PSAR, you're in from here and you get all of that. Or if you got this entry with the stop, you might have scratched or fractional, but then you're getting back in here anyway, and bam, and somewhere in here, your stop's going to be by here now. You know what moves like that? Frog champions move like that. Devon Energy, Mexico, Brazil, Simon Property Group, Home Depot. Frog Champions move like that because there's no index players on the other side that are beating them down. Fake one, go two. I'm not even going to draw the boxes. You just figure it out. Z3 breakout. Z3 breakout again. Grinding up. Sideways quiet channel. Breakout to the upside. Never look back. That's the sector oil and gas exploration, XOP, Frog Champion. That's what moves like that. Frog Champions move like that. Another XOP later, or this is in the morning. You're not going to lose money on that. There's your little box. I don't care where you get in. Here on the RLXD or break out of the box. I don't care. Your stop is here. Never look back. Look at the RL rolling over. And everything's starting to fail the other way. That's the meeting of the minds. The RL30 crossed through the RL90 right there. This is how you use the fractal nature of the regression lines to look at what's happening on the next higher time frame. That's a 3090 rollover right there. That's a P1 on the next higher time frame. And an orderly move. You'll make money on that trade. Alcoa. Big gap up, sells off. Now, if you played the 5-minute box, it's something like this. If you wait to play that big box like that, I'm not offended. After that big spiky move up and it's failing down through here, that's a reasonable short position, at that point. Now, do you feel the sine wave, like the little yin yang? And now what you should feel is the turning point of that damn dragon. Here's yesterday's close, higher low. So big gap up, sold off sharply to yesterday's VWAP, to yesterday's close, crosses back above, buy it, or buy it, or buy it. Doesn't matter. Get in, get your risk out. Grinding into a sideways quiet channel. You'll make a fractional on that one. And now the Z3 pinch is interesting. That is potentially a short. Target 1, 2, and then all the way back down to here. Not an unreasonable exit. And what else is moving that day? I don't know. Could be. Check your stack. Couple more. Cleveland Cliffs. This will make you sick. Look at that tight little box. And you can see where this is fucking going. Pardon my language. Pick any stop you want. Can you feel that failing right there? Yeah. So get out. What's Cleveland Cliffs? It's a frog champion. What do frog champions do? They move like that, especially when they start off the day in critical states, and when their whole sector is moving like that, and the whole sector is leading the S&P, that's a low-risk trade. U.S. Steel, same sector. Same tight little box. Feel where this thing's heading? Yep. I should just take a picture of that right there as a. I know there's a way I can do that. Are you going to lose money on that trade? You will not. Even if you came back, let it come all the way back to the VWAP. Even then, you made money. God, there's still more. Holy shit. XOP. There's your little sine wave there. Breakout. Not losing money on that trade. So, hopefully you found that to be helpful. And the replay on this should be really, really good. What you had was a speed run on the last 7 or so, and a deep dive, drill in deeply on that first one. And then the big win is figuring out how to get a partner group preparing these kinds of little trade studies for each other and become very efficient in the production of learning lessons. How many guys could you put in a group? 5, 10? You do one and you study 10? How easy is that? Easy. I mean, I'm doing all the work for you right now, doing all this stuff, and you're paying me for it. But I'm really teaching you how to do this and teaching you the learning technology on how to do this. And all I did was using, Snagit and some boxes and a little bit of fiddling around. But you can work together with guys that are looking at the same pattern. So talk to each other, get it sorted out. Use Basecamp and Campfire to post your trades and trade frames, and you'll find people that you have a natural affinity with, and you'll find out who's willing to do the work. You want to work with somebody that's willing to do the work, and that'll motivate you to do the work. So use Campfire and Basecamp to do that. Okay, that's everything I got. I'll get this processed and hung tonight. There's several tons of gold in there tonight. Thanks for hanging in. And yes, I remembered to record this. I'm glad I don't have to say all that shit again. Oh my God. Pardon my language. I hope YouTube isn't checking that for language. Never again.